Hello, my name is Alicia Shapiro with AInews.com, and welcome to another episode of our Driving Tomorrow Conversations with Industry Leaders, where we explore the latest developments and newest innovations in the world of artificial intelligence. Today, I am excited to be speaking with Ernesto Aguilar, a seasoned public media leader and a participant in the AI Journalism Lab leadership cohort at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at CUNY. Ernesto has dedicated his career to expanding audience engagement, championing diversity, and ensuring that journalism remains accessible and representative of all communities. With a background spanning newspapers, public radio, and DEI initiatives, he brings a wealth of experience in navigating the evolving media landscape. In today's interview, we'll discuss his journey in public media, his insights on AI's role in journalism, and how newsroom leaders can ethically and effectively integrate AI into their reporting. So thank you for joining us today, Ernesto.
It is such an honor. You do such important work, and it's
Thank
exciting to
you.
be here.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad to have you here. I'm really looking forward to our talk today.
Me too.
Like I said, you're a part of the AI Journalism Lab leadership cohort at the Newmark J School, a program designed to help newsroom leaders navigate AI in ethical and innovative ways. What inspired you to join the cohort, and what unique perspectives do you think you will bring to the group?
So, I'm somebody who works in US public media here at KQED in San Francisco. Public media organizations were formalized by the Public Broadcasting Act in 1967. In that, President Lyndon Johnson argued that it should be the aspiration of the country to enrich American spirits and intellects as well as our futures and our fortunes. And so I got passionate about this industry and I wanted to set that table for those who are not familiar with what
Mm.
public radio and TV are and what they do and why they exist. But I'm also passionate about this industry because I grew up in East Houston in Texas, and I experienced the power of public media as a teenager. I got my world opened up by public radio and television and experienced its power to change lives and to help Americans to see our own possibilities in ways we might not have ever imagined. So before working at KQED, I supported public radio stations around the nation, traveling to small towns, to little villages, and to big cities to see firsthand how profound the needs are and the struggles for these organizations to engage communities and to support the information needs in all of these communities. And I joined this cohort because I'm not someone who fears technology. And I believe that generative AI and its many uses provides truly an unprecedented opportunity to help public media to stay relevant, whether it's helping to analyze misinformation or to help leaders to do the work that they never would have otherwise had the potential to do on their own and would have been completely out of their reach. I see AI as something that's going to shape the future of media, not just public media, but the media industry as a whole. And I joined because I believe that nonprofit educational programming needs to be at the table around conversations
Yeah.
with AI and related to AI because of our educational mission. And
Mhm.
as someone who's excited about that ethical innovation piece that is so important to the AI conversation, I'm energized by the opportunity.
Oh, that's great. I love that. And the program brings together journalism leaders from around the world. What do you hope that participants, including yourself, would take away from that experience, and how do you see it shaping the future of journalism?
So we're all going to walk away with something very concrete
Mm.
in the sense that as part of our participation, all of the members of the cohort have to come up with a project that they'll implement to improve their organizations. My colleagues in this cohort have big and small issues, but every one of them is very consequential to the organizations in question. Everything from onboarding to misinformation and addressing community needs have been just a few of the discussions that we've had. I'm hopeful that the example that we set shows others that AI can be used effectively and ethically, and in my greatest of worlds, inspires others to try their own experiments. Thank
And
you.
AI rapidly transforming journalism. What role do you see public media playing in ensuring the ethical and responsible AI adoption in newsrooms? Have you had any discussion from the cohort that influenced your thinking on this?
So this is the most exciting part for me because for me, public media has had this long-standing commitment to public service and trust building. I mentioned the Communications Act in 1967, in which Lyndon Johnson felt like educational broadcasting was a fundamental commitment that America needed to make to its people. So being non-commercial in licensure, our industry is well positioned to set high ethical standards for AI usage in journalism and around building trust. Thus, organizations like NPR and PBS and ours here at KQED have created our own internal guidelines so that we're transparent about using AI and its role in our content and community engagement initiatives. And moreover, I believe that public media can foster responsible innovation and light the way for a lot of newsrooms. Whether you're a for-profit or a nonprofit newsroom, we are going to hopefully be a leader in that space. As a part of the cohort, discussions have circled back to accountability, how to develop guidelines around data usage and transparency and how we use algorithms, and then editorial oversight. And some of these conversations for me have underscored that public media as a mission inspired business can serve as a model for other news outlets that are really trying to figure out how they can best adopt AI. I can also tell you that many in this AI and journalism cohort stress that public media can help our audiences to better understand AI's benefits and pitfalls. And they're trying to figure that out for their own businesses too. This particular cohort has for-profit and nonprofit organizations. And so many of them are trying to figure out what are the true benefits and what are the pitfalls for us as leaders, and how can we ensure we avoid those pitfalls so that we retain trust with the audience. This includes explaining how AI tools can be used to curate and create content, but also so that the public remains informed and trusts the process.
Just as you were talking, it made me think that the public media could be a leader, like you were saying. And then I wondered if public media could really influence the other traditional media outlets, because everybody thinks that the media is so biased, and maybe they are. Everybody says they're not. They put some bias in there for sure. But I just was wondering, how can the public media be the leader for the rest of the industry?
So I think that one of public media's real advantages is transparency. We
Hmm.
are very open about our policies. We're very open about how we communicate with the audience. And we're trying to be very clear about where guardrails are at, where no-go areas are at, and the tools that we use to serve the audience. We are an industry that answers a lot of questions from the audience about what we do, what our editorial choices are, and how we decide this, that, or another piece might be a focal point for an editorial, or where our directions might be related to our decisions for coverage or attention around anything that people may have most concerns about. The NPR Public Editor's Desk is a really good example of that, in which NPR, of which KQED is a member, has a public editor whose sole role, or primary role rather, is to field questions to the audience. If an audience member has a question about what's happening from the newsroom or from a particular set of editorial standards, the public editor is there to explain what the process was and how that derived the content that they hear on the air.
That's
Many public media organizations are committed to that level of transparency. And I see many of my colleagues in the public media space, whether it's, say, a WBUR in Boston, for example, post publicly online, here are our standards around generative AI use. And here are what we do, and here are where we don't permit it to be used. And here's why we permit it to be used. And also importantly, here's why we don't permit it to be used. We take the audience trust as a foundational piece of our business very seriously. And so we try to make sure that our policies and our guidelines and guidance, whatever the organization may be, very clearly is stated outward to the audience. And I'm hoping that type of sharing outward can help inspire others in the media space to think about how we're applying AI tools, but also how we communicate outward about it.
That's so great. And the trust is crucial to maintaining an audience. So, with AI tools generating more and more content, how can news organizations maintain credibility and ensure transparency with their audiences? What conversations have you had around that stood out to you, maybe from the cohort?
So one of the key lessons that we took away, at least I've taken away so far in our cohort, is clearly labeling content that is supported by AI while
Mhm.
providing insight into the editorial process and helping maintain credibility with the audience. In KQED's case and in many organizations' cases, for-profit and nonprofit news, AI is not permitted in content creation. But for organizations in which it's permitted, we're having very intentional discussions about how do we disclose that. Also, I think that there's an important part of this where we discuss how AI might be used operationally. So even when AI automates tasks, explaining the role of humans in verifying what's coming out and ensuring fairness remains irreplaceable, both as a part of the process, but also as a part of the communications. Cohort members, in my experience, have been consistently emphasizing the importance of maintaining that human in the loop as a part of quality control as well as trust. We've also discussed creating feedback where audiences might be able to flag errors or ask
Oh,
questions around places where AI is engaged. And that two-way communication for me bolsters that trust and also positions news organizations to be more responsive to what the audience is curious about when it comes to AI. Certainly, there are audience members that are completely opposed to it. A
yeah.
lot of audience members we see are also curious. They want to know how it's being used and why it's being used. And so I believe that there are many individuals in the cohort, my colleagues, who believe that is an important part of the next iteration of our journey.
Nice. Yeah, that is important. I know when I write my articles, I sometimes feed ChatGPT like another person's article and just to give it a baseline and I say, "Okay, we need to rewrite this in our own words. You don't make up any facts, don't make up any quotes, things like that." I've got all kinds of instructions on it. And then I do double check it. I check it twice actually. I check it against an article I found just to make sure there's no extraneous facts. And then I put our new article into Copyscape and just make sure that the content duplication is not high and there's no plagiarism and things like that. I do have a little note at the bottom of all of my articles that says ChatGPT did help me in the brainstorming and research and writing process, but that I have the final say and editorial edits have been made by me. Just also because I believe in the transparency as well. I think it's so important to let you know, hey, ChatGPT did help me write this article, but I did check it and I had the final edits on it. Trying
One,
to be a little more transparent and a little more open about it.
and I think that's always the best place to start from. It truly is. The thing that I have reflected back to many of my public media colleagues in these conversations is that we're not trying to replace a particular voice. We're
Right.
not trying to have AI do someone else's job or your job or whoever's job it may be. The reality is, particularly for nonprofit media and for those who are non-commercial broadcasting, the relationship is the business. That's where trust is built. That's where donations are built. That's where service is built. That's where ambassadorship for the audience is built. The minute you start to get away from that human relationship and the voice,
Yes.
you're just going to ultimately damage your business and you will have unintended outcomes for the next generation.
I
So
think
it's
you're right.
important to be very intentional about how you decide to approach the AI conversation with content and also making it very clear, to your point, where it's being used and where it's not,
Hmm.
and also disclosing it.
Yeah.
As part of the work that I do here at KQED, I convene our AI working group, and something that we've talked about in previous meetings, is raising up practical use cases, because there are cases like you're talking about, which is we're getting help from ChatGPT or an LLM to help us with writing, but there are also things to help us improve efficiencies,
Yeah.
improving meetings, helping us summarize, helping us understand a piece of data that we might not otherwise understand, but also to help identify elements that we might otherwise miss,
Yes.
and getting past our own blind spots and our own blinders to get to what might be really essential business information that benefits the organization long term.
I agree with you. I think that's spot on. And you've dedicated much of your career to audience engagement and diversity initiatives. How do you see AI helping or maybe potentially hindering efforts to better serve underrepresented communities in media? Are these challenges being explored in the AI journalism lab?
So they absolutely are. And I do think that AI powered analytics, content distribution, understanding all of these things and much more can help surface stories in communities that are overlooked.
Mm.
Sometimes you can leverage algorithms that can help also detect gaps in coverage. And newsrooms, when they understand those gaps in coverage, can more proactively address underrepresented voices.
Hmm.
I regularly write about AI and use cases for diverse engagement in my newsletter, Oigo, and I've spoken about this in trainings that I've done as well. Job descriptions are a good example of this. Ways that you might be able to highlight needs within content, within sourcing, and also helping us to craft better onboarding. Might be just a few needs. I believe that the field of AI has risks, but it's also rich for us to build on new relationships. As with any technology, that requires human attention and also a level of skepticism, for me at least. It's easier for us to marvel how quickly and thoroughly AI might do something.
Yeah.
Something I always bring up to people is that, oh, it's great that it can put a cat in a moped. But really, the magic is not about the cat in the moped. It's about how it might be able to amplify voices in our communities,
Yes.
make our relationships stronger, and bring us a greater awareness of
Hmm.
local history, or free us up to be able to do that as organizations. So far for me, the cohort discussions have highlighted the potential dangers of AI in reinforcing existing biases. And this is
Okay.
where I get into this part that I mentioned about blind spots. And this is especially important if training data doesn't reflect the diverse range of voices in a community.
Yeah.
And I believe that there is certainly a need for human oversight, and that intentional diversity goals need to help us model development. And what I mean by that is that we need to have what we want to accomplish, not just, oh, we want to do this and AI is going to be the savior and is going to fix it. We need to actually have a goal. You will understand this, but you're only going to get from a prompt what you put into it. So
Yeah.
you need to be very intentional about what you want to achieve in order to really receive out of it what you'd like to get from an LLM or a model. So in our sessions, I can say that we've explored how to think about inclusive language, thinking about those models, and thinking about culturally competent data and how that can either support or hurt editorial workflows. So I walk into this thinking, how can I help ensure AI tools do not inadvertently marginalize or misrepresent communities? And that's just an ongoing commitment that I have in this space.
Well, as you were talking, it made me think, do you think AI could democratize the news agency in such a way that a person in Nebraska can use AI and a website and maybe an AI avatar, and now they can produce the news on their own? Do you think it's gonna open up more doors that way, or do you think it's gonna take people's jobs?
So I will say no and yes in a couple different ways. So, yes, I, as a creator, could say, I am going to create the San Francisco Daily and then populate it with a lot of content and probably tell some pretty interesting stories potentially and maybe potentially serve a number of audiences as well. But the reality is that this wonderful tool doesn't address the fundamental issues with journalism and democracy.
Yeah.
It does not replace the relationships that a journalist has.
Yeah.
It does not replace sitting down with a source and talking with them about something that is very difficult in their lives, an experience or what they're experiencing right now. It doesn't replace the fact that there needs to be a continued love for the engagement the communities have with civic life. And journalism serves a critical role. Journalism and journalists serve a critical role in understanding the nuances of what's going on in a particular moment
Yeah.
to convey to a community the weight of what is happening or the lightness of what is happening in order for us to take in the heaviness
Mhm.
or to celebrate the lightness that's happening in the moment. And that's to my point earlier about nonprofit media. This is where memories are built. This is where trust is built. This is where people's care and ambassadorship and support is built. Because if I understand your experience better, I'm able to relate it. ChatGPT can do a little bit of that, but probably not going to do it as well. And won't, just because of the variances of a community, won't understand every newsmaker, won't understand every single history, may not know the connections that you might personally have, or I, as a journalist, might have with a local establishment that closed and the people who were there for 40 years, who were the cooks, who were the wait staff, who were the regulars who came in. And that's just one example of all the ways that local journalism makes this wonderful difference in our communities. I do believe that AI can certainly benefit, help us all benefit as news organizations, but ultimately, unfortunately, it can't. Actually, fortunately, in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
it cannot replace journalism, and it is going to help. It can help democratize, though, but it's not going to be able to do it fully.
No, I think you're right. You definitely still need the human perspective. There's so many times that I told ChatGPT, okay, I see where you're going, but we need to make sure we add in this and that
Yeah.
one.
And to my point that I raised earlier about just the establishment that closes, we've all experienced this in our communities.
Yeah.
Some place that was loved for generations has closed, and the guy who used to cook your favorite dish, his story is completely not going to be held in ChatGPT for
Yeah.
the most part.
Yeah.
The stories of the memories just won't be there. I oftentimes tell our journalists and told other people in other sessions and other conversations, what is the thing that stood out for you in your favorite story?
Mhm.
In public radio, we talk about driveway moments. What's the thing in a story that made you not want to get out of your car and go to your appointment because what was being told resonated with you so deeply? It wasn't, chances are, oh, somebody ran down a bunch of facts and figures for me.
Yeah.
It was the tone of voice. It
Mhm.
was the depth at which somebody was telling a story, at which the journalist was relating with the source that they were talking to or the guest on the air. Those are the things that people remember when they think of journalism. That's what matters most to people when it touches their lives in that particular way. And so I always want to encourage people, don't say no to AI,
Mhm.
but also remember what brings us to journalism in the first place. What brings you to journalism in the first place?
Yeah.
Because that's something to hold close to your spirit, because chances are a lot of people feel that too.
Yes. AI can't replicate human connections. So
Yeah.
that's so important. Yeah.
Yeah, it is somebody in the cohort once referenced to me. It is the anxious intern. It wants to please you.
Yeah.
It is going to give you all the information to try to please you. Whether it actually is going to resonate with you personally and whether it's going to be the most impactful thing you've read is another thing altogether.
In your career, as we mentioned, you've had a career in newspaper, public radio, and audience strategy. What key lessons have you learned about adapting to new technologies while staying true to journalism's core mission? And has participating in the journalism lab given you any new insights?
So I have learned over my career that embracing new tools is less about chasing trends and attention.
Mm,
It's really about consistency.
yeah.
It's about upholding values,
Mm,
accuracy, fairness, service. As I mentioned at the very beginning, public media shined a light in my life as a teenager. It showed me the power of this media and it changed who I became. It transformed who I became as a person.
that's great.
And we, as journalists, can shape the lives of all Americans. And so for me, each transition has taught me to balance experimentation with that steadfast commitment to the public interest. And for the reasons that I remain passionate about this work, to make a difference in the lives of young people like I was. And that approach has been reinforced by this cohort for me, at least. We're
Good.
constantly evaluating AI's potential by holding it accountable and also by being open to try to think about ways that we could uplift all of our organizations to serve the public better. Engaging with peers in this cohort for me has broadened my understanding. Being in the nonprofit space, seeing what for-profit companies deal with is a completely different ballgame.
Yeah.
And so it's helping me understand AI's role in storytelling and editorial workflows in not only my own lens, but through theirs, and also helping me gain practical insights on building more inclusivity, whether it's through data sets, whether it's advocating for more transparent policies and reinforcing human editorial judgment. It's been a really important moment for me to grow as a professional.
That's so awesome. I love that.
Thank you.
And before we wrap up, I'd like to ask a couple lighter questions so our audience can get to know you a little better.
Sure.
When you do step away from your work, what are some activities or hobbies that you're passionate about?
I'm debating whether to tell this one because sometimes it scares people. But I'm going to say it anyway.
Okay.
So I am definitely drawn to resilience, and partially because my career is one that has been one of resilience. East Houston, working class Mexican American neighborhood. My father was in the military. After he finished his service, he became a postal worker. My mom took care of us at home when I was a kid. And at 16 years old, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I had no clue. I knew I was going to the military because my father was very traumatized by what he experienced in the military and decided, you're definitely not doing that. But I had no clue what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And no one in my family had graduated from college, had been to college, and it was public media that put me on this path. And
Wow.
so I am very aware of the fact that resilience has been a theme in my world.
Mhm.
And so if you look for me on Instagram, you will find that I often will seek out these activities that will push my boundaries and challenge my perceptions.
Wow.
So you're going to see that I have swum in the ocean with all kinds of species of sharks.
Nice.
I have handled many snakes. This is why I had to think about caution, whether I would say this or not, because I know a lot of people are afraid of snakes. I am definitely hand it to me type of a person.
Yep.
And I have connected with a lot of nature and wildlife that has predated humankind by millions of years. And that is because I like to be humbled. I like to understand the world being a much bigger place than humanity has been, and also like understanding adaptability. And so it's something that I've always been curious about. And in addition, to adding to this resilience part of it and just this adaptability part, I write two newsletters, love doing that. I also write about experimental music for treble, for other publications online.
Oh,
And
cool.
I like having something fresh and something new in my world. And this is just how I like to push myself.
I love that. It's an incredible perspective. That's so awesome. And I'm sure it helps your career at the same time.
It's a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
enjoy writing. I enjoy thinking about the world in a different framework than just
Mhm.
the public media executive kind of way, but thinking about the world. You live in a place near an ocean, so
Yeah.
the ocean is this tremendous place that you suddenly realize how small we are as humans.
Oh, yeah.
And it's always interesting to me. I was handling an Indian python not that long ago. And it's interesting to me that these creatures that have been here far longer than humanity are still here.
Yeah.
And for us, it's to understand the world will exist long before us and is because it has been here long after us is something that reminds me that this is important, but there's a whole world out there that is much more grand than we are sometimes.
I love that perspective. That's so good.
Thank you.
And for those who are wanting to integrate AI into their careers or maybe into their own journalism work, what advice would you give to them to ensure that they do use AI responsibly, but at the same time, maybe pushing innovation forward?
So I give this advice to newer people in their careers, and it applies to AI as well. Focus on integrity,
Yes.
focus on constancy, focus on impact. Your voice and the trust that people have in you is far more important than any tool. So you always want to center that.
Yeah.
So in this case, you can pair AI tools with rigorous oversight.
Mhm.
And you can be clear about how AI might shape your content as a professional, or you may prioritize particular ethical considerations.
Yeah.
But you always want to innovate while upholding your values and
Mhm.
upholding the values of trust and accountability to your community and to journalism.
Yeah. That's such great advice. I agree with that. Thank you, Ernesto, for joining us today and sharing your insights on AI in journalism and the future of newsroom leadership. It's really been a fascinating discussion, and I know I asked a couple extra questions, but it's really fun for me, so I hope you didn't mind.
Oh, I love it. I have been a news director. I've been a reporter. I am somebody who is still passionate always about the news.
Yeah,
There are big moments that happen in the news cycle, and I always remind myself, this is why we got into this, to
yeah,
talk to people, to get to understand people, to help people understand the world and each other and what's happening in our worlds a little bit better. So if this conversation contributes to everyone's understanding, I think mission's been accomplished.
and for our audience, if you'd like to learn more about the AI Journalism Lab and the leadership cohort and the work that's being done through this program, you can visit the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism's website at journalism.cuny.edu. And I'll put the link to the full cohort announcement in our description below. Keeping you connected to tomorrow. Today, this is Alicia with AInews.com.